So I am going to get started because I am in Mexico and I hear my grandson are about to arrive. So I have a very brief but wonderful opportunity to introduce this series to you. This is the third in a four-part series sponsored by the Eco-Justice Collaborative of Philadelphia Yearly Meeting. We are recording this series and you will have access to the recording as well as the slides provided by the presenters. Next slide, please. This is a companion to a series that we did last spring, which focused really on stewardship from the point of view of what are we doing in our relationship with the natural world and how can we center that relationship as a priority in our meeting houses, our schools, our retirement communities and the like. And we covered 4 programs that we think would be of interest to all of us in the faith community to adopt. One was the Audubon Habitat Certification, the bird-friendly garden from the Audubon, and the homegrown national parks, as well as understanding what policies you might want to adopt to protect your flora and fauna where you live. Next slide, please. We know that this matters and that we matter in all of this because we are large property owners and because we have a commitment through the institutions that we as Friends run, but also almost all people of faith run or operate housing projects. They do retirement communities, retreat centers, seminaries, their own houses of worship. So we can be models and inspire other people by taking action. Next slide, please. What this series covers is really the stewardship around our buildings, the brick and mortar and the heat that we use and the electricity that we use in those buildings. So we started with solar and how schools and religious communities can take advantage of amazing tax credits that have never been available before. I hope you'll listen to that webinar. And then we most recently had one on how to lower your cost by assessing your peak use. And that's also worth listening to again if you didn't get to attend. And today we're going to talk mostly about how we heat and cool our buildings. And then we'll close up with really looking into whether it's the right time for all of us to start putting in those EV chargers. Next slide, please. So there are options that we never dreamed possible when all of us were either using propane or oil, or more recently, natural gas. Next slide, please. And these are opportunities that we have 2 very competent and skilled people to share this information. Bert Dallas and Steve Clark are going to give us a big picture overview of what's happening, what our options are, and where you can find out more. So I turn it over to Steve. Thank you both for joining us today, and I look forward to what we will learn from you.
Great. Olivia, are you going to show the slides? Awesome. So if you could go up the one slide above, please. Back one slide, please. Yeah. So, yeah, that one. So thanks for the introduction, Paula. So nice to meet you all. This is an outline of what Bert and I are going to cover. What really I'm going to cover the first 2 topics let's take a look at your bills. Are you paying an appropriate amount for energy? And then in number 2, I'm going to talk about this tool, Portfolio Manager. We put the Radnor Friends buildings in there, and it was very illuminating. I'm going to go through that example and show how this can be used by your organization to make continuous improvements, track carbon, track costs, all this kind of stuff that we did at Radnor. And number 3, Bert is going to go through funding his research with IRA funding, particularly for houses of worship. So next slide. The first topic I'm going to cover is understanding and minimizing energy costs. And in particular, looking into two questions. Are you paying reasonable rates? And number three, let's really talk about these third-party energy vendors versus Pico defaults. And for the purposes of this, we're going to be looking at the bills for the Radner Friends house. Next slide. So on the left is a bill, and it might seem like a lot of technical minutia, but what's really important is how much you're paying for energy. And you can see this organization has, if you look at the electric supply there, your bill is cut into charges for supply, like who's actually supplying the energy. And then Pico has the charges for getting it to you, which is the transmission, which is on the top. And if you look at this, what really jumps out is it has the rate that Radner Friends is paying for electricity. So if you can see that yellow thing there, 28 cents a kilowatt hour. If you go up in the right, Pico has this, they disclose what the price to compare is. So if you just bought, use Pico as your supplier, you would pay 9.6 cents. So that's, what is that, 3 times higher right away, a big concern. Next slide. And the same thing for gas. So American Power and Gas was selected probably several years ago for natural gas. And the same story applies here. You can't really do much about the delivery charges at the top for either of these categories. You know, we have to use Pico to get the energy to our buildings, but we do have the freedom to choose suppliers. In this case, Radner Friends is paying $1.43 a therm when the Pico default is 0.54. Do you see that? That's a huge difference. And the reason probably this happened was American Power and Gas in the past may have offered a clean, quote, clean energy supply for both electricity and gas. And for gas, it can be something that is supposed to come from landfills or some, quote, renewable option. And typically when people do this, company organizations, they offer at the same price as Pico or even lower for a fixed amount of time, usually 6 months or a year. And then they say it floats. And so it sounds pretty innocuous, but what happened here and happens across the board is once that period is over, they will rip you off. They will jack it up. You can see in both these cases, it's almost triple what you would pay if you just bought it from Pico. So next slide. Okay. So if we look at the cost of this for these two buildings, you compare the Pico cost, the price to compare versus the current supplier, you can see it's pretty serious financial implications here. And this is nothing unusual for this part, these vendors. This is standard practice for third-party suppliers, is to inflate the prices once your period is over. And I consider this just a form of fraud or ripping you off. This is something that gets me just so angry because these organizations typically are claiming that you're getting a renewable product. And they take advantage of people in that sense. And then if you're not being careful and either canceling it or renewing it in a year, they will rob you, as true here. That's one of the reasons I do not recommend using third suppliers. I always recommend just buy the Pico Brown Power. For one, this potential to be ripped off. Two, there's too much fraud potential. If a company says you're buying renewable electricity, there should be some documentation to support that. You should be able to dig and get a reasonable answer that you are actually getting the renewable energy credits for it. And I haven't seen anybody doing that. And third, this is a dubious climate impact, even if there is no fraud. This is really just accounting in the voluntary rec market. And voluntary recs are very cheap if this company is honest that they actually buy them and build it into your bill. But you're not building new capacity. You're not building renewables. So I view this as a huge distraction in our field. I realize it's controversial, but for all those reasons, I would not go near. I would just get the cheapest Pico, and that extra money, if you did want to buy renewable credits, donate it to a candidate of, who supports climate or something. That's my personal take. So if you must buy clean electricity, there are places that these are vetted. It's like Green E certified vendors. These apparently Green E has vetted third-party suppliers that actually have bought these renewable energy credits on your behalf, and you have some faith that you are actually, quote, buying renewable energy. And the second point, mark your calendar for the end of the fixed price period and then cancel or renew. If you don't do that, you're going to be in the situation in the table above, guaranteed. This is just a terrible, dishonest segment of the market. But if you if it's really important for you, follow that. I would go to Green E and then really be careful when it's over. And next, so that's all I really have to say about this. This is really easy to look at your bills. Probably other like PSE&G has a similar thing. You can check your supplier, how much are you paying for electricity? What is the price to compare? They should be pretty close or the same. And then you're not getting overcharged. Any questions on this before we go to the next topic? Okay, next slide, please. Oh yeah, this is just a slide of this is the Green E site, and here if we look at commercial renewable electricity, these are the only ones available in Pennsylvania. So that company, American Power and Gas, that was on the bill is not listed here. So that tells you something. But whether these companies actually are doing it, I kind of feel like this is kind of like the situation where you're buying, quote, free range eggs or something. The whole scandal with that whole thing of the animals are not being treated any better. It's just marketing. I feel it's similar in this whole segment, but these ones, at least someone has looked at them and would be worth looking at. So anyway, this is more on that. Next slide. So now I want to talk about how you can benchmark your properties. So it could be schools or any type of building with portfolio manager. I'm not sure if anyone has used this or heard about this, but this is a tool that is pretty easy to use, and Bert and I have entered the data, and we'd be happy to help anybody create an account. It's all free. It benchmarks your facility, compares it to other houses of worship or schools or what have you, and in terms of carbon, in terms of costs, all kinds of great stuff. Next slide. So it's free, it's simple to use, and there's a lot of different building types in there, but I imagine for this community, we have houses of worship, we have daycares, we have schools. And so what the tool will do, it would compare your school to schools all across the country, corrected by square footage and occupancy and basic information. So you can enter the your energy usage and costs. And there's also a lot of sustainability metrics in there too, where you can enter a lot of things about recycling and use of the property in terms of native plants, all kinds of stuff that is way beyond what I'm going to talk about. But for outputs, there's some really useful ones. How much energy per square foot does your building use? How much carbon per square foot? Operate energy costs per square foot. And then this is all put into an energy star score from 1 to 100, where 1 is the worst performing buildings, the least efficient, and 100 is the best, and 50 is the median. And then, as I said, there's potential to get the building certified as for an Energy Star. And then, even more importantly, if you enter your bills, and I think this will, hopefully we can do this, Bert, for the Radner Friends house. Say if the meeting house, we enter the bills now, and if there is work to, say, insulate the attic, we can track that in Energy Star Portfolio Manager and hopefully see all these scores improve.
Great.
Which I think is a really great way to manage it. Next slide. This is what you need to enter it. It's really basic stuff. All properties, you need the square footage, occupancy, how often it's used, just the basic stuff on the left. And the right is stuff that is specific for a building. In this case, it's a house, it's a worship house, and Bert entered all this information and we put it in. Next slide. And so this is the input. So Bert, we worked together and we created an account, and it's in his name and his, you know, for all the passwords and emails and stuff. And there's 2 buildings there. You can see there's a day school and then a meeting house. So you can have as many facilities under one account. So maybe there might be other meeting houses that would want to join here and use this, or maybe there's a different levels of organizations that you guys have, that you could look at each other's facilities and see who's doing what and things like that. Next slide. So this is the Radner Friends Meeting House, and so we entered the basic information we just showed, as well as the data from the Pico bills. And the Pico bills, you can have there's a spreadsheet that you can get from Energy Star, and you fill that out and you just upload it. There's also ways that if you guys work with your Pico account rep, you can directly download the data from the Pico My Account. And when I used to work for Pico, we trained people on that. So your Pico account manager can help you with that, but it's really not rocket science to just enter it one by one. Could a quarterly meeting? I'm not sure the question. Is that you, Ruth? Someone put
It
that.
is, but we can wait till the end. I didn't mean to interrupt your presentation.
Yeah, okay, let's continue. Next slide. So that's one of them. So here's the 2 buildings. There's the meeting house and then the day school. And these are really like the headline metrics from these. There is the amount of energy. So the energy is, for both of these, is from natural gas and electricity. So per square foot, kBTU is 1,000 BTUs per square foot. So you can see that the meeting house uses 94 and the day school uses 35.5. So big difference. And here's the cost. The cost when you add the bills per year for the meeting house, 8,200 versus 6,200. And now this is the interesting stuff. This is the greenhouse gas emissions. So there's two metrics for this. One is just based on the site, and one is based on the fact that electricity generates carbon. So you can see the amount of carbon emissions per square foot for each of these buildings. And then what's interesting down there is also how much does it cost to operate the building for energy per square foot. So you can see the meeting house is a little over $3, and the daycare is $1.34. And what Energy Star does is it ranks the energy use per square foot of the meeting house compared to peer. So this would be churches, probably all kinds of houses of worship across the country. And you can see that this Energy Star score at the very top is a 9. So that's 9 out of 100. So that is a very low score, not a good score. And if you look at the day school, it's 96, a really excellent score. So I think if you're over 80, you can apply for the building to be Energy Star certified, which I think would be a nice thing to have. So that is within reach of the day school. But you can see here, looking at the meeting house, it really needs a lot of, it needs a triage. It needs dramatic attention to cut down on energy use. And Bert and I, and probably plenty of people in his community have looked at it and know that there's not really any significant insulation in the attic. And no surprise, this is what you would see. And so that kind of hopefully adds some urgency to insulate that attic and get that one done, as well as just call Pico up and fire American Gas or whoever that was, just get rid of them immediately. And so this score gives you some clarity on what to do for each of these buildings. Like, you know, even before you think about electrification, because in electrification and heat pumps, the first thing is always reduce the amount of energy you need to heat and cool the building, and then electrify. And you put in a smaller heat pump, it'll be cheaper all around. So next slide. And then here's Energy Star buildings within, I think, 50 miles of Radnor, and there's only 2. So, you know, that might be a nice thing. I think it's something that I think there's a little plaque, but it's certainly a recognition that the day school could go through to get certified. I don't think there is any daycare facilities that have this designation, and so that I don't think that's that hard to do, to get this, to get your building listed and to get this kind of certification, if that's of interest. Next slide, please. So that's really all I have on this, but you know, what I want to get before we transition to Bert's discussion on funding, you know, what I suggest is like do some real basic accounting on your building. Are you paying too much for electricity? And if you really want to buy renewable electricity, make sure you do it from a reputable source and you're not going to get ripped off. And number 2, benchmark your buildings. Really see how efficient they are. And I'd be happy to help anybody either set up in a portfolio portfolio manager account, or look at the bills. But it's really, both of them are really straightforward to do. And I would do both of them before you really start thinking about decarbonization, because it's the easiest things to do and the cheapest things to do. You should do immediately. That's all I have. Should we transfer to Bert, or anybody have any questions, or what would be best?
Hey, Steve, it's Paula. I'd like to just jump in and thank you for your presentation. I think you have reinforced the message that we also received from Liz in the first episode, if you will, of this series, which is that the first obligation of all of us is to become as efficient as possible, because the more efficient we are, then the less renewables we need. And you're making, I think, 2 critical points, that before you replace or look at specifically your HVAC system or changing or decarbonizing by imagining by buying RECs that you've solved the problem, you're telling us the very concrete steps we would need to take to how do you actually look at your bill. And most of the institutions that we've invited to the series will have commercial accounts, how to read a commercial account, how to make sense of the choices, whether you're doing a power purchase agreement directly or with a consortium of other meetings or other schools. So to take that very seriously, as well as beginning the benchmarking, which is just the old saying, if you can't measure it, you can't evaluate whether or not you're making progress. So thank you for bringing those two elements in. And I think the other focus of this presentation is really on the fact that we have options between heat pumps, electric heat pumps, geothermal heat pumps, some much more advanced technology, especially for larger facilities than we've ever had before. And it can get a little confusing as to know where to go and how to do that. And the organization that many friends, institutions, and schools have used is Practical Energy Solutions. And we have a recording of the head of that consulting firm talking specifically about types of heating and cooling systems that you might want to consider that we'll make sure to link to this as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Bert, and I do see there's a question specifically about the portfolio manager and how that works in terms of shared database collection. So if you would like to answer that first, Steve, and then we'll turn it over to Bert.
Yeah, I think the idea is that could a quarterly meeting have a portfolio? Yeah, absolutely. I think the example I showed for Radnor has essentially two facilities and two sets of bills in there. So I have no idea if that's I really set that up for Bert's community to use, but anybody can create an account, and Bert and I have shared the password back and forth so that we can go in there and work on it or look at it. So yeah, absolutely. There's multiple buildings. You can have several buildings within one account, if that's the question, or several different organizations under the same umbrella.
I think that answers my question. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah. It's a good way to get a little competitive too. Like if you see,
That's what I was thinking.
if
I
someone
wasn't going to say competitive, but maybe some incentive for others who hadn't thought about it yet to.
Yeah, and it'd be so gratifying. Like I'm assuming, Bert, that you guys are going to insulate that attic, but once that goes in, and we pull the bills in 10 or 12 months, that's just an advertisement for everybody else to do it. I mean, it should be very gratifying. You should see the results of your work in these metrics. Otherwise, why do them? And so that's the point, is to broadcast success too.
I see Chuck also has his hand up. Chuck, you want to join us with your question?
Yes. Thanks, Steve. My question concerns, we're in the Pico, our church is in the Pico operating area, and we have some solar panels that produce about 25% of the church's electricity. And but we use an alternate supplier. We use Washington Gas and Electric, and we have meters set up so that, and at the beginning of this 13 years ago or 15 years ago, when we put the systems in, we were supposed to get our usage or generation from the panels deducted from our bill, and I'm not sure whether that's happening or not. It's hard to tell from the bills. And do you know what the either the policies or the regulations are regarding giving credit, the utility giving credit for the panels?
I guess it depends if it's is it behind your meter, the bill, the solar panels?
Yes.
It is. Okay. So you're in Pico service territory?
Yeah,
I could say what I think should happen. I'd be happy to look at your bills if you want to, but you do have a Pico account manager whose whole job is to make you happy and answer these questions. I could trace down who that person is through the people I still know there, but as opposed to calling the 1-800 number, you might not get much help. But there are commercial accounts do have Pico account managers assigned to them, whose whole job is to make you happy. And so, if you want, I could put my email in the little chat. If you want to reach out to me, I could introduce you to somebody and see if they could find somebody who could answer that question for your exact account. If that makes sense.
yeah, thank you.
I'll just put it in here, okay?
Okay.
But the other question, I mean, in terms of portfolio manager, it also has the ability to track and use solar. And I don't know how that, we didn't do that for Radnor, obviously, but it can handle that as well. So.
Thank you. Winthrop, you have your hands up. I think we have time for one or two more questions.
Yeah, so that was on the last question there. It's net metering is the specific service that you want to make sure that your institution has for the solar.
Right.
Net metering automatically does that before it goes to the utility, and you only get billed for the difference.
Yeah, that's probably what they have.
That's in all likelihood what they're going to tell you. But that was great advice, Steve, and thank you.
Rita?
The energy co-op fit in the picture, because I used to use that in Philadelphia. Maybe it doesn't extend over to Gwinnett, but I assumed that we were getting 100% green sources for our electricity.
Our EAC went through all these questions, because we originally one of our main goals was advising people to switch their third-party supplier. And our chair interviewed the energy co-op and could not get an answer on, like, where are the recs? What is the documentation I'm actually buying? It doesn't mean it's not true, but I will say, I mean, you're paying to be in a co-op. It's quite a bit higher than normal prices to be in the energy co-op. And there might be other communal reasons why to do that. But the price of on the voluntary rec market, which they may be buying or they may have their own fields, it's 0.3 cents per kilowatt hour right now. So if you think of the Pico price to compare is a little under 10, it's a small value that should be added as part of the Pico, say 10 cents. It's a very small, low value to actually have voluntary recs. So the energy co-op, I know, charges rates that are similar to what Radnor's paying now. So you'd have to evaluate what you get for that. I don't really know, but I do know that our chair could not get that assurance from them. Like, show me the recs. It doesn't mean it's not true, but it's a lot. You're paying a lot for something that should be much cheaper. That's all.
So I'm going to jump in here and say this rec conversation is really complex, and there are several good articles that we could reference and share it, but I think we'll stop on that there. So we have time to hear Bert's presentation, and we can add any other additional questions at the end.
Okay. This is Bert, and I'm going to share my screen. And I'm going to click share sound. Okay, so this is starting at a place that let's just start at the beginning of the 21st century, when a new term came in, the Green New Deal. And about that time, it was coming into popular usage. And in 2018, the midterm elections, that the Democrats took the House and the Republicans kept the presidency and the Senate. 2019, the Green New Deal was introduced and passed the House and failed in the Senate. The next year, the Democrats won the presidency and kept the House and narrowly had the Senate. So they introduced a Build Back Better act that, if you remember that, and it took 9 months to get a companion bill, which was called the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022, resolved between the two of them. It was signed in 2022, August, by President Biden. And we felt on a real upswing. This is about how it was being paid for. Basically, a great deal of what are those called? Corporations, taxing corporations, a lot more than they had been before, to raise over 10 years, to raise over $800 billion to pay for this bill. It's very large. And it was going to go to a number of different places, including the extending the Affordable Care Act, supporting Medicare Part D, which was important, increasing IRS modernization so they can get that part of the money they expected to get from better IRS enforcement. And then the biggest part of this bill was going to be going to energy security and climate change, which is part of what we are dealing with here. The total of these numbers is 971, which is more than what was earmarked to pay for it, but that's the federal government. I'm not quite sure. So part of that 971 was going to be for many different things having to do with energy security. The ones that affect us here are about 22 to 48 billion dollars in building retrofits and resilience. It's only about 6% of energy security, because a lot of it goes into building new production, incentivizing new renewable energy production, which is very important, and for modernizing the electric grid, which is very important as we electrify. Our grid is antiquated and basically cannot handle all that is going to be asked of it. Now, how this is generally paid out is this is going to be paid for by the states. The states is each going to administer the payment of these things, and the federal government incentives are usually extended via tax credits. And this is the first time in history that nonprofit organizations and houses of worship can benefit dollar for dollar as much as if they had been a for-profit business, and that they would just be reducing their taxes by that much. So it is a new way. Generally, it started out that it looked like it was going to be through credit transfers. That is, we would get a credit and that would be transferred, say, to a contractor or vendor for the equipment that we were having installed or upgrades that we were having done. And now we also have elective pay, or quote direct pay, in which we can submit to the federal government or to the state, I'm not certain, for payment. And so all of this is rolling right along. And then I received this article in last week's New York Times. It says that the installations for heat pumps have slowed very much, and there are a number of reasons for that. One is that inflation is up by 14% from when the bills passed. Another is that the Federal Reserve money rate has gone from about 0.5% to 5.5% for borrowed money, which is a disinclination for anyone to be able to borrow money to do the work and before applying for an incentive for a rebate. So this is daunting, although it's still there. What I had hoped when I started researching this a few weeks ago was to today be able to present to you a clear and concise method to go step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, step 6 is the check is in your mailbox. And that hasn't done it. I have a sister who works answering questions from the public for the IRS. I have a friend who is a CPA. Both of them said, well, I don't know, because the federal government is still not clear on this. So what I have done in this presentation, if you can see up at the top, I think this might be active, but there's a URL at the top of every page that at the end of this, you can upload this file and you can access the websites that give guidance on how to pursue this. Okay, so the first, we're going to go to federal guidance from the White House, whitehouse.gov. This is their website. And for instance, if you want to install solar on the home, it's 30% for the cost of the solar. You can home and appliances, they can be $1,200 in credit for adding insulation. The insulation we talked about for Radnor Meeting, insulating the ceiling, which is all very good for saving money and reducing the amount of emissions we have heating the building. That can go for that. We can get 30% or $2,000 for heat pump installations. There is a credit of $150 to hire an energy audit company to tell us what we need if we're not certain. That's good. And pretty much every credit that that is being offered is offered at a higher rate for low-income communities, low-income families. They want, that is the federal government, wants everyone to be helped by this, even those who have more trouble affording the equipment up front. So here you see that 30% of the buying and installing, and the same for low and moderate income people. And this is, if you go to this website and sign up there, you should get updates as they go along. Now, what we were talking about, direct pay that is now available to nonprofits, those who do not pay taxes, can get a direct pay back. They're calling also elective pay. And here it says, I have this specifically here because at the bottom, it says in black and white that public charities, private foundations, schools, hospitals, houses of worship, and then also religious organizations are eligible. So we are fully eligible for these benefits of the Inflation Reduction Act. And this same website has a methodology, which I would have loved to have active at this time. It's not yet active, but each one of these, and we'll go to it so that you can see what is there. This is a timeline for what you can expect. And that same website has a basically recording of a briefing from White House personnel. So let me go to, by clicking here, it's now an active link, and we are live on the internet with this. I think there it is. So this is on the internet right now today, this minute, and I'm just, because I had put an abbreviated parts of it up there. So this is, how do you apply? If you go to this link, you will see step 1, and you click on the plus, and here is more details on how to apply for it with other links of other parts. And step 6, receive your direct payment. But each one of these has details of how to do it. Here is that timeline that had been there. And here is a basically a message from the White House about it. And it is a little briefing about it. Let's see if this is fast enough to.
All right. Good afternoon. It's
Can you hear
so
me?
great to be with you today. Thank you for joining in today's webinar on elective
pay, which is officially called elective pay, and transferability are going to significantly expand the reach of these clean energy tax provisions. We're here today to talk about direct pay. Thanks to direct pay, for the first time ever, entities that do not have federal tax liability, like states, cities, tribes, territories, school districts, public utilities, nonprofit organizations, houses of worship, and more organizations, are going to be able to be part of building the clean energy economy.
Okay, so I just wanted you to see and hear that, so that that is the yeah, that is the federal government that is saying that. So that is first person to hear it. Okay, going on, federal guidance from the federal government from the IRS, Internal Revenue Service. This is a page. Again, this link is active, and each one of these expands out and goes to places. Sorry, each of these goes to places. And for instance, it might be for a clean vehicle credit or your home energy credits. These could be very useful to you if you pursue them. Now, being administered by the states, this is the Pennsylvania state guidance, and it's being under the care of the Department of Environmental Protection. And this is a shot of their page. Sorry. There we go. So what is new? And this is kind of what had me scratching my head, but because down here, it says rebates for home electrification and energy efficiency are expected to be available in something it's covered on my screen, 2024. So it should be available now. And the federal source showed their example as 2023 and how the different benchmarks that it will go through for which you needed to take actions and when you could expect the payment. And here it says 2024. This is just one of the things I scratch my head about. However, tax credits for lowering energy costs for households are available now. It says on the line just above it. And so that might be other things that we can look into. This website also has other benefits that can be provided in terms of lowering the cost of energies for households that are in need. So that is another good site to be looking at. There are a number of religious organizations that provide links and guidance to those who are looking for that. My favorite is Interfaith Power and Light. If you have had anything to do with Interfaith Power and Light, you will know what a wonderful organization they are, how smart they are, how the in-depth of their investigations into it. I'm showing just a couple of columns here. I'm not going to jump out to it because much of it looks just like this, and it will go for several pages of asking questions and then answering them with very specifics about where you can go to investigate that. So as we had said before, it's not active now. However, by investigating with this, you will know when it will be. Here is another one. This is ours, FCNL, that they do not have as much to say about the Inflation Reduction Act as the Interfaith Power and Light. However, they do have some cogent suggestions of where to follow. And I found this online that from the United Methodist Creation Justice.org, and it's wonderful. It's a comprehensive list of the benefits that are available to you. It goes for about 3 pages. And at the bottom of which there are, it has 3 links to the Department of Energy and to the IRS, and then back to the interface Power and Light that we looked at just a minute ago. So it's a terrific place to go looking for that information. There are a number of environmental organizations that can provide guidance also as you search for the current information. All of the information that on website that I'm showing you now are very fresh. That I put this together about 2 days ago. So one of which is the Blue-Green Alliance that has a listing of different amounts that are available. For instance, 30% for, well, what it says here, and for larger projects, they need labor standards. So if you have a larger project than just a few units, you can get an additional 10% of a incentive. However, you have to follow prevailing wage guidelines, which means basically the equivalent of union labor costs for it. So you have to weigh that benefit. There's another 10 or 20%, it says here, for low income communities or tribal land, which I don't know if applies here, maybe. And also 10% for domestic content, which means that if the equipment that you are installing is made in America, there is a 10% allowance for that, to add to the 30, to add to the 10, add to the 10. So you can be at 50% of the cost being covered by incentives, maybe more. Here's another organization, the Environmental Energy and Savings or something. I don't remember the name of this, but it says in the second paragraph about how direct pay option is a game changer. You can go there to find better guidance on how to access that. And then there is also commercial guidance on how to do that. And by that, I mean lawyers. And I looked around, and when I Googled it, there were many, many law firms that offer advice on how to fill out the forms for you. The URLs on above these are not active. I'm not recommending them. I'm not endorsing them, but just so that you can see that the amount of money out there is considerable. And they want nonprofits, tax-exempt organizations to come to them for guidance for a fee. So you can look this over, and if you feel that this is the help you want, there it is. This is another organization. I got to point out here that that I was a little bit not so pleased with this. On the first line, it says most churches only worry about their tax-exempt status. As long as they don't have to pay money to Uncle Sam, they're happy. And so I was a little bit offended, but I, for some reason, thought it should be there. They have more interesting information there. I just want to add a couple of things at the end of this. You might see from time to time a mention of a 990 form. At Radnor, we were told that we don't file it because it's filed for us by Philadelphia Yearly Meeting. I spoke with the chief financial officer of Philadelphia Yearly Meeting. They said, do not file such a form, that PYM does not file such a form. I also want to say, as you start in on such a project, the important words are documents, documents, documents. For instance, if you are changing out a heat pump, fully document what you have prior to the change. Keep all the documents for any work that is done on your building, on your equipment, and to have that ready for the government for when it asks. It should be covered now. They are slow in rolling it out, so I cannot advise on go ahead and make your changes and expect that it will be covered in a way. They are just slow in getting it out. As you see, that this was only 6% of the amount for energy that is being rolled out. So they haven't gotten around to this. I guess they're taking care of the big fish first. I'd also like to point out that there is an organization called Quaker Action Mid-Atlantic Region that has started within the last year. It is and this is an active link for quakeract.org. And the mission of this organization is to provide Quaker values to Harrisburg, to be able to speak for us in Harrisburg at the state government, the same way that FCNL speaks to the federal government. And our initial focus is on climate action and gun violence. So if you go to this website under upcoming, you can look at different events that are upcoming, different issues that are upcoming. There is also under there a page where they will give you the access, the facility to identify who your representative is, who is your state senator, who is your state legislator in Harrisburg, or actually in Washington also, so that if you wish to reach out to them and tell them what your thoughts on something are, this is a way of finding out that information. And with that, now I want to say thank you and ask if you have questions.
Bert,
Yes.
I just wanted to call
I'll go to
attention
stop
to
sharing. Yes.
Quaker Action also covers New Jersey, and we're hoping to cover Delaware pretty soon but we don't have somebody who's expert in Delaware legislation. So it's a mid-Atlantic region that we cover.
Thank you, Pat. Winthrop, I see your hand.
Yeah, hi. If it's possible to get a list of those links in print form, that would be great. Like an email out to folks.
I suppose it would be. However, I believe, Olivia, we intend to uplink this as a PDF with active links out to the network. So you can go to the websites themselves and then through their sublinks to any specific information that is of vital interest to you. And I am saying this in all modesty that I believe that everyone on this meeting is fully capable of investigating and discerning what the issues are for you. I would also, if you wish to ask me, I will look around for you. And I think that when things change, I think this is a topic that would be very good to have an extended webinar on, because the details are going to, as we all know, with taxes, the tax code is going to get pretty persnickety for details and for information that they require. But it is a direct check back. It will be a check in the mail as opposed to a credit against taxes due.
At that Providence meeting, we've switched everything over. I'm the property clerk there. We switched everything except for the main meeting house over to heat pumps and so our social room, our classrooms are all on heat pump, and we've added a solar array to power things. And that paperwork process is still really sticky. We were last told that they're promising for January some new link is going to come out in the government as far as the direct pay, but it's still a little sticky as far as whether we since we do not file taxes, we do not pay taxes as a church, how exactly we'll be able to get that direct pay. It's still not been concrete, and we're a little trepidatious about accepting it's going to happen someday as the answer.
I understand your feelings exactly. In fact, I'm very happy that you are on this webinar because I didn't know who you were, but I had heard that Providence had done that, and I'm very interested in how it had worked for you. So it's still in progress for you, at least the receiving the incentive payments.
Yeah, we just got our area live about a month and a half ago, and produced our first megawatt hour of power this first month, and we're real happy about that. And yeah, woo, and you know, things are headed the right direction, but it does look like we're going to have to float the bill for quite a while the government gets around to it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this is what we are talking about here, is to see that, and as far as how to pay for it, there is not a lot out there besides the IRA at this time.
Yeah.
Winthrop, it would be just fabulous to get your data into Portfolio Manager.
Yeah, definitely want to do that.
And I'd be, you know, just reach out if you want anything, but I would love to see the before and after scorings, you know, when you have enough time after, and how it handles solar, all that kind of good stuff. That would be really
I mean, it's a constant direction that our meeting has been in for quite a while, and we decided about 5 years ago to start, you know, putting a foot forward and putting our money where our mouth is. And
Bert and I can help you track it if you want and get it started.
Great.
Yeah, that would be super exciting. I think a great example for everybody to just see the progress you're making.
Great. I'd love to meet with you sometime, Steve.
That would be great. Yeah, I mean, I would like to just invite you, if you have time sometime, to come to speak at Radnor meeting to talk of what we have plans for next summer to make that change. However, Quakers are not a monolithic organizations by any mean, and so it's taken a while to get us to the point of saying that we are willing and interested in replacing a gas furnace that is 3 years over its expected service life anyway.
Yep. It's working out great. And we have air conditioning now for the first time in 300 years.
That's wonderful. Are there any other questions?
Hello.
Oh, hello, Chuck, how are you?
That's a false sound that I made.
Oh, okay. Jackie, do I see your hand?
Just want to say thanks for this information. It's really nice to have people kind of leading us forward. Our meeting house does have solar on it, and I would love to set up a tracking grid and just see where we are now. We're at the point where we've done small things, and we've had an energy audit, and we had solar before we even started in on this process. And now we're trying to assess HVAC. But I think our next step is more insulation first. And we have one big door that needs to be tightened up. It's a big air leak. So we have one of our architect people looking at that. But it's just fabulous kind of getting more of a idea of what people are doing and what next steps we can go forward with. So thank you so much for this.
Oh, thank you, Jackie.
Yeah, and please reach out if you'd like to us to assist in that. Again, you guys do have a Pico account manager, and there is an automatic step where you can just log into your My Account and download in the form that Portfolio Manager takes, and it's really made to be easy and not painful. And I don't think it was that hard for Bert and me to get it in.
We're out of your district. We're in First Energy. West Penn Power.
Okay. Yeah, but either way, your bills, you know, I just took that right off the bills from the meeting house, from the little picture actually.
Okay.
So that shouldn't be a problem.
I don't see any other hands.
Bert, in the
Oh.
chat, Ruth has asked a question,
Oh.
and I'd be happy to read it to you.
yeah.
Is portfolio manager only for Pico customers? I'm in New Jersey.
It's national. It's the whole country. It doesn't matter. It's just that Pico has some tools to make data easier, and maybe other utilities do too. But yeah, I didn't use, like I said, I didn't use that for the runner. I just took the bills.
I am searching for Paula, and I do not see her connection, so she must have lost her connection. I think at this point, I would like to thank the presenters very much for this information. And I would like to thank all of you for joining us. And there is one more presentation in December, which will be happy to add the information to that. It's about, I believe, EV charging stations. Is that correct, Ruth? Okay. And
Yes.
and so that'll be a wonderful opportunity to learn more about how to get the funding for that and how that works. We have that available is on the PYM calendar, but once again, I'll send the registration link out when I send out the follow-up email.
And that's December 6th, in case you want to
December
put it in your
6th.
calendar
That's
now.
right. Thank you. That's great. So I think that we can wrap up now and say our goodbyes. Thank you for joining, and I'll do the follow-up, and I put in the chat that we will send our recording to Carlton Crispin, who does our video editing, and then we'll get this up on YouTube and on the EcoJustice webpage. Thank you.